If the council members would take their places, we will continue with the meeting. Chad, Nathan, here's Nathan. Karen, TJ, TJ. We are in the public comment section of the discussion. And the next speaker is Ralph Crummins. Come forward. Mr. Crummins.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for your patience this evening. My name is Ralph Crummins. I'm on the Bicycle Advisory Committee, but I am not particularly representing the committee tonight. I'm representing my own views. It's an exciting time for bicycling in Topeka. And first, I'd like to thank you for everything you're doing for bicycling and walking in Topeka. And second, I'd like to encourage you to recommend bicycling or continue to recommend bicycling and walking infrastructure, particularly trails, in the countywide half-cent sales tax. As I said, it's an exciting time, so I'd like to just review a little bit of the progress we've made over the last few years. One is you've approved the Topeka Bikeways Plan and made a long-term commitment to seeing it through. You approved funding just last spring for $400,000 to complete a $1.5 million project that's going to start construction this spring all over the city. It'll include many miles of street projects as well as some trail connectors. You approved additional funding for continuing the Shunga Trail to the west, crossing Fairlawn, or from Fairlawn to the west, which was a joint project with the county and will allow both youth and adults to safely cross Fairlawn at 29th Street due to the fact it's a very busy automobile intersection, allowing children to get to school and others to be able to connect Southwest Topeka to the trail system. With your adoption of Complete Streets resolution and your commitment to it, future street projects are including infrastructure for all citizens, young, old, handicapped, bicycles, pedestrians, as well as those traveling by car. In addition, 2 applications are pending with the state DOT, one for a privately funded $300,000 phase 2 of the master plan. You committed $40,000 to in matching our $55,000 that was privately raised from grants for this project. At the same time, the county committed over $450,000 for an extension of the Deer Creek Trail project, and we'll learn shortly from the state whether or not these dollars were awarded. There are many reasons that you know already about why bicycling is important, from the fact that the CDC says that bicycling and infrastructure are critical for curing the syndrome of obesity in Shawnee County. For economic development, bicycling has been identified as one of the 5 possible marketing focuses for this community. This effort, with its huge economic benefits, can't go forward without the commitment to the infrastructure to support it. Bicycling tourism is a growing market in the U.S., and bicyclists are looking for attractive destinations to visit, including developing trails, and these were defined both in the bike plan and the Shawnee County Greenway plan. And of course, quality of life, attracting workers to Topeka and Shawnee County. So finally, as you know, it's a tremendous investment. Bicycling, infrastructure, and walking infrastructure encourages bicycling and walking, fewer trips by car, and in the end, being a very cost-effective investment in infrastructure. And I should say, finally, safety. The more we have bicycling and walking infrastructure separating us from cars, the better off those folks are. In summary, this is a really important part of Topeka and Shawnee County. And I would like to add, I think 15 years is much too long, and $240 million is much too much to not include it in some way in the planning for the future of Topeka and Shawnee County. Thank you.
Good timing. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Next person is Joseph Ledbetter to speak.
Governing body, first point of order, are we going to discuss the JADO interlocal agreement tonight, or is that off the table? Because I have a lot of comments on that I can drop if we're not going to discuss it.
I'll point out, I think you should just present your comments.
Is that right?
You're on this item, and I think what the discussion has been is what it's going to be. So,
That doesn't answer my question. So you're saying to go ahead and talk about my concerns about the interlocal agreement as well?
you can state, you're on this item, so you can discuss all the aspects of it that you wish.
Okay, well, I'll be asking for more time. First off, on the sales tax resolution, I have a problem with the wording of the whereas as far as the success of the economic development, and to take credit for Target is wrong. It was a city employee that brought Target here named John Myers, and I know that because I discussed it with Neil Dobler, the chair of the chamber, and he told me that. He said, I remember when he did it. So this continuous moving the bar to take credit for things they didn't do is one of the concerns I've got about the lack of transparency of Go Topeka. I have no problem with splitting the resolution. I think economic development can rise or fall on its own. We've had 13 years of it, and I've got some pretty good data that shows some things are not working, and I'm willing to debate that singularly and leave the infrastructure part out of it and let the people vote that up or down on its own. I think 15 years is way too long for any sales tax. I was doing some research here on my legal search engine while I was sitting here waiting to talk, and most of the sales taxes in Kansas, probably 95+% of them, are just based on pure infrastructure requests in the counties. Most of them are in the 5-year range. Some are 4-year range. A few go to 10 years. There's one in Johnson County that went to 10 years. Anything beyond that is really an outlier. It's not what most counties in this state do, and there's 105 of them, and a lot of them have had sales taxes, but it's almost all for infrastructure. When we were at the town halls, I was at all of them. Most of the people that talked about economic development wanted more transparency. They did not feel comfortable with what we've been getting, and I can see why. And most people talked about a 7 or 8 year range on the sales taxes. So I would ask you to consider that. I don't think we need to shackle future generations of taxpayers to questions that we have today. They probably won't even remember any of us 15 years from now that we're down here at this meeting discussing this, or maybe even 10. I think the people at that time should make up their own mind what they want to do, if they want to pay that kind of a tax or not. I want to talk about economic development a little bit because we're told in glowing terms how successful it is. Over the last 4 years, when you look at U.S. Census data and Bureau of Labor Statistics data, you find that this city has lost about 1,000 net jobs a year. And back in 2000, when we had this first issue come up, and I remember having some debates about it with other people in the public, we were promised 14,000 net new jobs. You can Google it and go back and look at what was promised to us by Go Topeka. We've never had that. In fact, we've had a net loss since 2000 of jobs in Shawnee County. And the number is about 9,000. So to sit here and try to claim success for something that has been maybe marginal, we've gotten 180 jobs. In 2011 is when the contract was signed with Mars. 2011, you don't get to replay that every year into perpetuity. I'm asking for an extension of time.
It's been moved to extend by Mr. Manspeaker, second by Mr. Brown. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. And we didn't establish a time, approximately how much longer
Let's
Do you
try
think
3 minutes.
3 minutes, all right, for 3 minutes.
We have 8 yes.
8 yes, please proceed.
Thank you, everybody. When you get 180 jobs, you get it that year. That was 2011. The next year, we had a net loss of over 1,200 jobs in 2012. We lost Hallmarks, we lost Jostens, we lost more state jobs. In fact, we've lost approximately 30% of our state jobs just since 2009 here in the capital city. So that is Shawnee County. I, for the life of me, cannot understand this constant drumbeat of we're successful, when they won't even take criticism. We don't even get to go to the meetings. We don't even get to have input as to where our money goes. I do believe that the chamber needs to stay out of this election. They are a beneficiary of this contract, as is Topeka, and their members really should butt out. Let the public decide this, and that's fine. I have no problem with public debate. I do have a problem if you're a beneficiary of a tax and you're out there beating the drum and acting like, you know, you're just the ordinary citizen. Disclose how much you're getting. The chamber, according to its own 990s, is getting about $900,000 a year from this sales tax, from the Topeka funds. On the interlocal agreement, by the way, I brought up questions at the last JADO meeting, and the questions of the auditors were not answered. That was a public meeting. Those questions were asked on the record, and those answers were not forthcoming from the JADO chair, who was here earlier tonight. So I have a problem with the complete way this is run. If we would get transparency, a lot of these issues would go away, but it has not happened. On the interlocal agreement, I go to basically this agreement is, no offense, it's slanted towards the county. So the first thing I noticed on page 5 was we've got dollars specifically allocated to the county. I don't see specific dollars allocated in this agreement to the city. We have the JADO economic development specifically spelled out. Why don't we have the same language spelled out on city projects with specificity? And by the way, when I looked at the Attorney General opinions about these sales taxes, they want specific language. They don't want any misleading language in these resolutions that are put forth to the public. So you might keep that in mind. I think Ms. Hiller is correct that she wants specific dollars, specific projects, and those project descriptions should be laid out very clearly for the public to understand.
Okay, your time is up.
I'm going to ask for an extension.
Okay, Mr. Manspeaker moves to extend. Mrs. Ortiz seconds for approximately
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Remember, I
All those-
wasn't going
all
to go
those-
here, but
All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
is that a no or a yes?
Mr.
Manspeaker.
Manspeaker.
Thank you. Okay,
We
I'll
have
thank
8
everybody
yes.
now. All right.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
On page 6, I would like language that includes under disadvantaged individuals and/or business enterprises to include veterans. I think veterans are grossly underserved in this county. Please don't ask them to go to the VA, okay? That's not working. I think the veterans should be part of this. In the line limited to 3 years, these contracts, and subject to the Kansas cash basis law. Any multi-year contract dealing with a public entity has to have that specific language in it. I think that should be in this agreement. It talks about the contract requirement that the contractor respond promptly to inquiries from both voting and non-voting members of the board. I think you need to spell that out. 3 days is sufficient time to answer questions. I would also add, and is subject to KORA, the Kansas Open Records Act, which allows the public to make inquiries as well, of course, under the framework of KORA, which there's specific exemptions, which do not include economic development, by the way, but it does exempt certain other personal matters. Medical records, I couldn't care less. I don't want any medical records out of Go Topeka, okay, if they have any. Under section, paragraph 8, you have a word that troubles me down here in the last sentence, contains an enhancement of the countywide sales tax. I'd like that to be defined. I'd like to do some further research on it. I'm not sure this is actually legal that you can do this, but I think you need clear definitions of what you mean by enhancement. When you look at the Attorney General opinions, they say that it's very difficult to modify one of these once they've been put before the voters. And it's very narrow how you can amend them. And you cannot extend them. So I'm not sure that what they're asking is just a legal fiction or if it truly could be done. I have questions about this paragraph 9. I'm not sure it doesn't block you from making future amendments to the JADO agreement, and that would not be good. I mean, to sign one of these for, I don't know how many years you're going to do it, but 15 years or whatever, I think things rise to the public concern. Future board members may want to change parts of this interlocal agreement. So those are my concerns. I thank you for the extra time, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. I believe that completes our that completes the public comment. Our agenda item tonight is the discussion of the countywide retailer sales tax exemption extension. So I believe next week we will take action on it. We'll have a proposal for us to vote on. I believe that is the procedure. Is that correct, City Manager? Is that?
Mayor, Council, as we leave this meeting, we will gather what we believe is consensus. We will provide information to this body. The plan initially was to bring it back for discussion. I don't know that I'm hearing a consensus that we're ready, but would like to keep my ears on for the next 10 minutes.
Okay. Council members, do you have further comments or directions you wish to take? Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. The current half-cent sales tax is structured in such a way that approximately 75 to 80% of the sales tax revenue is raised within the city limits of Topeka. The proposal, as it came out of the county, had, in rough figures, 63 million, or approximately 26% of the revenue dedicated to city streets and the zoo. 80% collected within the city limits, but only 26% dedicated to city streets and the city zoo. That, in my opinion, is fundamentally unfair and places an undue tax burden on the citizens of the city of Topeka vis-a-vis the citizens of Shawnee County who live outside the city limits of Topeka. We've been hearing a lot about equity. Well, let me throw this out as a discussion item. We've been talking about a countywide half-cent sales tax. Let's consider the possibility of a citywide half-cent sales tax under the following terms. Citywide half-cent sales tax for 12 years, not 15. We continue to peel off $5 million per year for economic development. That seemingly is consistently supported by all the polls. Approximately 66 million devoted to city infrastructure, street, road project within the city limits. Zoo at approximately 10 million. We put money in for sidewalks, and I'm more concerned about sidewalks in the center of Topeka and in East Topeka, including Oakland. You put money in there for the trails and bike plan. And that total is 150 million, which is how much a citywide half-cent sales tax would generate over 12 years. The street projects would also include the 3 streets that the county removed, those being 29th Street, Fairlawn to Wanamaker, 37th Street, Burlingame to Scapa, and 37th Street, Kansas to Adams. I think we owe it to the citizens of Topeka to consider a citywide half-cent sales tax. If the county wants to float their own quarter-cent countywide half-cent sales tax for the purpose of addressing the Expo Center, Willard Bridge, and road projects, they're free to do so. I think this simplifies it. It simplifies our work. It simplifies it in the eyes of the voter to have a citywide half-cent sales tax for the purposes that I've outlined. Thank you.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Did that include Denise's 37? Did that? I apologize. That did?
I would defer to Mr. Whitaker, but I believe it does. That was my intent.
Okay, I just want to make sure, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
we ask?
sure.
Did that?
Is that, I guess the question was referred to Mr. Whitaker.
I'm going to answer it.
Okay,
It does.
it does. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitaker. All right, other comments, discussion, Mr. Manspeaker?
I appreciate and value Richard, or Councilman Harmon's contribution and the comments that he made. My main concern, and maybe I'm being too idealistic, but I sure would like to see the city and the county somehow work together. I realize historically that has not been the case. I think far too often that it's egos more than anything else, and all of us here have the interest of the people we represent at heart, and we should let that shine through rather than personal agendas and the things that we want to see accomplished. So I would like to commend the county councilor, Mr. Eckert, and Commissioner Cook for being here this evening and being willing to dialogue with us. That goes a long way in my mind to show that they are attempting to be a good faith partner, and I think we need to move forward, hopefully, in that same good faith. Thank you.
Mrs. Hiller?
In the interest of time, I don't need answers to all my questions tonight, but similar to Mr. Ledbetter, if I could put them out, I would like to do that. Would that work for you?
Okay, so what are you,
I
are you
have
proposing?
some questions that I'd like answered before we move forward, and I can simply go through them.
Okay, to be answered here tonight, or to
If,
get back?
in the interest of time, it doesn't, my point was, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be tonight. The county and the city and legal could decide
Yeah.
who could answer via the city manager, but if I could share the questions.
Okay, then it would be up to the city manager to direct someone appropriate to
I
get a
would be happy
response
to-
to you.
I'd be happy to ask them of the individual parties tonight. I think everyone is here. I respect the hour, and if we're gonna continue to work on this, I can go either way. So
Okay.
you tell me whether
Well,
you want me
I-
to ask the people.
I don't know how many are there. I think the best thing would be to provide them to the city manager to get a response back to you.
Well, I'd like
Oh.
to share them through the council, but I'm happy to just go through them if I might.
Okay, if
I'll-
they
I'll
won't
just
help,
zip through them. First, I do appreciate Councilman Harmon, your alternate proposal. Questions that I'd like to have for the council, I'd like to see us have a presentation about the Expo Center. I really appreciate HR sending out what he did today, but there are some council members who were not on the council when we had our presentation, so for questions, I have some into him. I'd like to see that before we finish. I have a question about the Willard Bridge. In the newspaper the other day, Tom Block said that it was good for 10 to 15 years, and we're checking it they're checking it frequently. Commissioner Bueller advised me in a conversation a while ago that there is a program that the state has that would cover, I think she said 100% of the cost if the bridge failed. And so the discussion of, which of course no one wants to have happen, and it's quite a catch-22, but I'd like a discussion about how critical it is and how soon that bridge needs to be done for us. On the trail system, we've discussed more than once the county staff figure is about 37 million. I'd like to have a conversation from them about what alternate plans they would have for funding that system if we don't use sales tax. Also, from the county, I thought that there was discussion from them that there were only about 3 bridges left in their entire master plan that needed to be done besides the Willard Bridge. And I wanted to have an idea as to whether they're a priority for this next 10 to 15 years or whether they're good enough that they could wait until the next round. On the city side, I would like some feedback about how staff was expecting to blend the funding and the timing for the 4 projects that are on this list that are in our 3-year CIP to be done between 2015 and 2017. Same question about the bikeway system. I think we can raise certainly the 3.5 million that's needed. If not from this source, where we had it stubbed into our CIP before as a priority, but without a funding source, so this one makes sense to me. And then a question for legal. The sales tax that we're in right now had language in it that absolutely locked the money and said that it was only for the specific projects, and that if it looked like there was gonna be money left, it could not be allocated to anything else until the sales tax expired. If we went with 15 years, that's a long way out, and people are being variously conservative about their estimate as to how much money it would generate per year. So I wanted to know whether it would be, whether it's possible to put language if we went with something as long as 15 years that would allow, for instance, a midterm check on how we were doing on revenue, or would allow it, any excess, to be programmed before the end of the 15 years. That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, you'll provide those
I can do that.
then to the city manager. Thank you. Is there other discussion? Okay. Going once, going twice. This completes the discussion item on the countywide retailer sales tax extension. And that completes our agenda. Discussion items. We then go to announcements. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing this evening.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not used to going first. Couple of things. The storm that moved through Sunday night knocked out my phone. If you call my home phone number, you get a busy signal. I'm not on the phone. I just don't have a dial tone. So AT&T has been called. So if you need to get a hold of me, probably call the council office. It's really not funny. Call the council office or email me. I will reply to emails, but my home phone's dead. Second thing, last Saturday, I participated in the Fiesta Mexicana 5K run walk. It was a great event. I've run that before, and just want to compliment the race organizers. Artie Gonzalez, I know, is involved in that, and I'm sure there are others involved too. It's special for 2 reasons. The course is totally flat. I mean, there's not a hill, there's not a grade anywhere on that entire course, which I really appreciate. The second thing that makes it so special is that the neighbors, they get out on their porches and they cheer you on as you're running through the neighborhood. And I've never had that in any race that I've run. And I think that So it's really special. One lady was out there with her garden hose spraying the runner as we went through, and that's a good thing. So anyway, I just wanted to thank the committee for putting that on. They held it one or two Saturdays earlier than usual. We had great weather Saturday, and I hope the organizers continue to hold it that time of year. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Mrs. Hiller.
A couple quick things. In our council packet last week, we got an array of class announcements for the entrepreneurs, minority and small business section of the chamber. They're really excellent. The classes are starting anywhere from September to November. The information, I'm sure, is on their website, and I just wanted to encourage people in the community to sign up. I do believe that they have been responding to the kinds of requests that have come from us and from the community to target these classes. We're getting good reports. So I just wanted everybody to know those class notices are out. Also, a request to the city manager. I have gotten a request from constituents to see if we could have, perhaps at the council meeting or otherwise, a report from the police department about the strategies that are being used to address noisy cars. It is that time of year where boombox cars are out and about. They're, I think, not legal according to our city ordinance, but I promise to pass that concern along. And other than that, certainly our fire marshal has gotten information out to the public and so on about fireworks safety, and I hope everyone has a great 4th and see you at the lake if you're in town. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am thrilled to hear that Councilman Harmon enjoyed the hospitality Oakland neighborhood. Glad you had a good time. Fiesta has some other things coming up. On July 12th at 8 a.m. is the Fiesta Golf Tournament out at Cypress Ridge. And then 10:30 a.m. is a parade downtown. And 7 p.m. the Coronation Ball at Ag Hall. Also wanted to remind folks that there won't be a First Friday Art Walk this month. There'll be a second Friday Art Walk due to the holiday. And I wish everyone a safe 4th. Be careful with the fireworks, please.
Thank you. Mrs. Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too wanted to ask everybody to be mindful on Independence Day of our veterans and our dogs and our animals. And please don't forget to pick up your mess out there that you're shooting off. Richard never did say how he placed, but I'm assuming it was pretty good since he didn't mention it. But we're grateful for that. July the 5th, which is a Saturday, correct? I'm kind of off on my days here. Free movie in the park is going to be at Chesney Park, starting at 8:30. Mr. Mayor, we thank you for coming out. And a lot of people were happy to see you. So I just want to continue to extend the invitation. If you don't have anything to do, a lot of families and friends are coming out. And Chesney is a really great little park. It's off between 17th and 21st, and it's on Clay and Buchanan, I think. So we just hope that you'll come out and enjoy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Everhart. Mr. Man Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to be brief. This evening on my way here, I stopped at my normal gas station to get gas, and a gentleman named Don was standing in the parking lot, and Don is the manager of the BP at Huntoon and Lane. Don and I have grown to know each other over the course of several years, since I think I've lived almost 6 years now in the College Hill neighborhood, and that's the gas station I tend to go to. As many of you know, there was a violent crime there and a shooting yesterday. Though the situation has lots of concerns that we could try to address, the thing that truly amazed me was the actions of the individuals who were in the gas station. Because these were strangers, and they stood in the way of an assailant's gun to protect a stranger. These are Topekans to me. So when we talk about sales tax and we talk about who is it benefiting and how is it going to affect us and all those types of things, those are the folks that I want to focus on. The people who truly care about this community, the people who will put their lives on the line for someone else. Everybody at that gas station did their part to try to rescue that woman. And fortunately today, she's alive, and fortunately, the gentleman who was shot, or Byron, who my daughter went to preschool with his daughter, fortunately, it sounds like he's gonna make it. But I think as a community, we have a problem that we need to look at, and it's a problem that we talk about on the cursory or the edges of, but we never really want to delve into because it's too complex. There's too many nuances, there's too much that we can't fix. But I'm not okay ignoring it, because people get shot when we ignore it. We need to address violent crime in our community. We need to address poverty in our community. We need to address gangs in our community. We need to address drug abuse in our community. When I was talking with law enforcement yesterday, and I did a ride-along last week after the budget meeting, and Mayor Bunton used to say this all the time, make no doubt that criminals will be caught in the city of Topeka. Yesterday's proof of that. But the reality is that it's our job as council members to prevent crime from happening, to provide opportunity, to make sure that policing is as effective as humanly possible, which again, I think is not our problem currently. It's all these other things on the fringe that need to be taken care of and addressed. And so last week at the budget hearing, I made a comment about I could think of 1,000 better ideas than a facade program in downtown Topeka. And one of my constituents called me out on that and said that he expected my 1,000 ideas in full. Well, riding along with law enforcement afterwards, and I don't know the numbers, I don't know the figures, but if you put, say, $150,000, $75,000 a year to two individuals who were mental health crisis intervention team professionals, folks who could deal with folks in mental crisis, how many people do we keep out of our jails by making that happen? So when you talk about a 10 times return on investment for a facade program, what I'm talking about is reducing the amount of citizens we incarcerate because they made better choices, because options were out there. What we have right now is folks who have limited options, limited resources, and we fund what we can fund through our budget process, but it's a pittance. We're not affecting real change. We're just putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. So we all need to wake up. I think many of us are awake and have seen it, but collectively we need to address these concerns because it's not going to get better without us actively pursuing it. My wife frequently engages in lots of community activities, and I get to see how things unfold as she interacts with government, different bureaucracies and things of that nature. So I was a little concerned this weekend when she informed me that there was some concern as to whether or not the College Hill Parade would take place. And I'd heard about this issue just, in passing from folks, in that there was some change with law enforcement in terms of the barricades that need to be used for parades. So that's fine. We have a neighborhood association. We'll happily get the barricades, except the barricades are $400. And they're $400 for an event that has a $500 budget. And I live in a neighborhood that has means and the ability to hold a block party, to hold a parade. So if I'm a community that doesn't have a neighborhood association with money in the coffers, how can I have a block party? How can I have a parade in my neighborhood? Something I would strongly encourage us as a city to think about doing is investing in our own barricades and allowing people to rent them from us when they want to hold an event and charge them a flat rate or a deposit that's returnable, because cost becomes prohibitive for individuals that want to have that type of street party. And I think in terms of the community and the neighborhood that I want to build, the reason I moved to College Hill was for its 4th of July events, because it was a community, it was a neighborhood. So I hope other neighborhoods can have the same opportunity. I hope that finances aren't inhibiting them from being able to do that. And the last thing is, my wife started a small business, and what she's doing isn't really important, but what is interesting is that there are a lot of steps in the process of the small business where she has to interact with the city, with the state, with different entities. And it's been very eye-opening to me, the amount of bureaucracy that a small business person in the city of Topeka encounters in trying to be successful. And it's unfortunate because I have to imagine if I'm just an average Joe, average individual trying to trudge through and build something, some of those bureaucracy roadblocks would stop me from trying to create a business. I would just give up. So are we encouraging growth, or are we stymieing growth through too much democracy, or through too much bureaucracy? And, you know, I've been hesitant to bring up this issue because it obviously affects my life personally, but I think we all need to get a better mind, or, you know, wrap our minds a little bit better around the problem. It's one thing to bring in a Mars, it's one thing to bring in a Home Depot, but it's something completely different for immigrants in our community, for those who don't have financial means in our community, to be able to start a business and produce for themselves. And if the only encumbrance is government, I don't think we're doing our job, because we should make it easier for people to start businesses, not harder. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ortiz requested a comment.
I just like to comment on the barriers. City manager, we have some at Second and Golden that never get used. They just sit there, those orange barriers. And I'm glad you brought that up, Chad, because even, I was gonna bring this to the city manager's attention. I had talked to Nita Woolgas when we had a function down there, and I've seen so many people get hit trying to cross the street down at the Noto District on First Friday Art Walk. And she said, do you know how much those barriers cost? And I told her no, but the city had some. So I just don't understand, for the safety of our citizens, for the safety, you know, of parade goers or throwers or whatever, why those can't be used, because they're over there nicely stacked and they hardly ever get used.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. It's getting close to 10 o'clock. I don't know how much longer it's going to go, so I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting past 10.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to extend the meeting past 10. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the meeting is extended past 10. Mrs. Schwartz? No. Mr. Schmidt? No. So that concludes the announcements. We have one person signed up for public comment, Mr. Ledbetter.
I'm not going to ask for an extension. Thank you, governing body. A few weeks ago, I went to a poverty town hall meeting over at Washburn, and there was about 150 attendees. I think I was the only lawyer there, so I don't, maybe there's a joke in that, but anyway, I don't know. And I went there because of my concerns about High Crest and the net reach facility that we've got over there. Poverty, whether the chamber wants to talk about it or not, is up 50% in this community over the last 10 years. Those are actual statistics from the U.S. Census. So when we're talking things that could be vague, like economic development, let's talk with real numbers. Let's talk with people. Let's talk about real problems out there in this community that are not being solved. And I do believe we need a different economic development model. You know, economic development is just getting up and going to work every morning. It starts as simple as that. It starts for 7,000 plus of us who have our own small businesses in this town. We do a lot of economic development, and we're not subsidized by the sales tax. But we do have good ideas, and we should be listened to. I'm intrigued by Mr. Harmon's idea about a half-cent citywide sales tax, and of course I have questions, and of course we're not allowed to ask this in this public comment, but would it begin in January 1 of 2017? And would that be the only economic development funds that would be generated, would be under that city sales tax? Because I can see if that actually happened, it would streamline the whole process of economic development. We would only have one body that we have to talk to, and we could go to the manager. We could ask for questions to be answered at public meetings without it being split and rotated from city to county, which is confusing for the public. It's not confusing for me, but I'm used to it. I mean, I've been on many a boat. I've rocked with the waves. But I think that that is not the best way to run a program. You need to be under one entity, one set of lawyers, one manager that can make sure that the money is being transparent and accountable. And although recently somebody said that I overuse that word, I don't think I use it enough. I think transparency is a good thing. It's the public policy of this state. Topeka is a subdivision of that state. We have to follow it, like it or not, and there's no exceptions under Cora for economic development. So, you know, I guess I'm the myth buster, because there's a lot of myths that have been floating around that just don't make sense, and they're a legal fiction. Those monies have to be transparent to the public. But anyway, I'm intrigued by that idea, Mr. Harmon. I don't know if you're gonna really pursue it, but it's always interesting to hear somebody come up with something creative. I see some merit in at least having a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Seeing no other business, we are adjourned.